Good morning, everyone, again. My name is Rodrigues Almeida. I will be the moderator for this session today. Thank you all for joining us at this event, where we will talk about how to make smart cities projects bankable, especially on times of COVID-19 and for the recovery of this pandemic. And today I have here with me several high-level guests that I'm very proud to put all of them at the same table to discuss this topic. Just a quick note before I present my partners of panel. This webinar will be recorded. So, as I mentioned, I'm Jorge Almeida. I will be our moderator. I'm one of the EIP-SCC matchmaking experts. Today I have here with me Georg Houben, who can say a few words about him. Georg?
Yes, sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm the policy officer in charge of the marketplace and a number of other smart cities issues within DG Energy. I'm very happy to be here and also to later on give a bit of a small introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Georg. So also we have with us Juan Alario. Juan, can you introduce yourself?
Hello, morning. My name is Juan Alario. I was a former director at the EIB, and presently I cooperate with several institutions. Notably, I am a member of an international fund in climate change, and also I cooperate with ECP for smart cities and for Gini Finance.
Thank you. Carlos Francis, could you introduce yourself?
Thank you very much. Good morning. First of all, thank you, Jorge and Georg, for having us here today. A little bit about myself. I'm an engineer as a background. I've worked all my career in energy, working in energy utilities across Europe. Now I am working for the Smart City Infrastructure Fund and based out of London.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, Fernando de Roda, could you present yourself?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much to the European Innovation Partnership for this invitation, to George and to Georg. My name is Fernando de Roda. I'm a founding partner of a sustainable finance firm called Greenworld Partners that specializes in long-term financing of energy efficiency projects and clean distributed energy projects, specifically in the built environment.
Okay, thank you all for introducing yourself. As you can see, we have a very diverse panel, so I'm looking forward for the presentations. Just some quick notes. First of all, the agenda. I will start with some housekeeping rules. Then we will have welcome an introduction by Georg Houben, who will just basically set up the scene for the presentations of the investors that will follow. And after the presentations with the three investors, we will have time for questions and answers. As regards to housekeeping rules, you have noticed that you are all muted by default. This is just to minimize the background noise, but we are very looking forward to your questions. And for that, we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, where you can ask questions in two ways. You can use your chat box that you have on the GoToWebinar control panel, or you can raise your hand and we will try to unmute you. So you allow you basically to mute yourself so that you can put the question live, and we will be welcoming questions from your side. Also, if there is some questions that we cannot answer during the event, we will try to get back to you via email. Again, please note that this webinar is being recorded. So, Georg, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, George, and also thank you to the panelists for being with us today. Now my task is to give you a little scene setter, what we are going to do today. Now, it's a bit of a repetition of things we also said during the recent matchmaking event we had last week, 2 weeks ago. It's actually, why are we anyway bothering about smart cities, and why is that so important? Well, first of all, cities do represent the far biggest share of EU population. That's number one. That's an old argument, but still very valid, and it's sort of beating them all. The second one is that cities are the aggregation place for about pretty much everything. Cities do have an impact on jobs, on resilience, on health, on pretty much any issue you can think about the environment, about climate change, and not least, cities are at the forefront of COVID-19. So you can take it as you wish. Cities are in the driving seat of so many policies and challenges that it's just making sense to think about that. Now, what are we looking at today? On EU level, there is a number of things being prepared and still on for cities. The support to cities is even increasing with the forthcoming framework programs. I just mentioned the Green Deal here with the renovation wave. Plenty of measures also in the area of sustainable urban mobility or ICT as an enabler, but also as a business model deliverant on its very own right. So there's a whole lot of things coming our way in terms of funding. But then the question is funding enough? Well, I think it's not. And that's also the reason why we are here today to discuss with our present panelists a bit what can we actually do in order to put forward better financing for city projects. So what's there except like outside of the funding bubble, if I may say so? What can we do in order to get those projects to the market? Well, I think also as a scene setter for the plenary, for the panel, I think that financing has one very strong advantage, and that is that it can be more flexible and quicker. Of course, under certain provisions, and these provisions and prerequisites we will hopefully learn today, and I'm quite looking forward to the discussions. Also, as you know, I will stick around, so if you have a specific question to the Commission, don't hesitate to ask it. Should I not be able to answer it today, you will receive the answer as already announced by email. And with that, with no further ado, I would give back the floor to Jorge. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Georg. So now I will give the floor to Juan Alario just for his presentation. Juan, you probably have the control of the slides, and I will ask all the other panel members to close the cameras and mute yourself during the presentation. Just look in the camera.
Thank you, George, and thank you everybody that is listening this webinar. The subject I will develop today is financial innovation using public funds to finance smart city projects. Let me start first by the next slide. Okay. What are the investment needs related to a smart city? Well, we have a problem of definition, but from different studies, I think most of the investments will be in environment, urban transport, housing infrastructures, which is becoming an important subtopic, and very high capacity telecom networks, mainly for small cities and rural areas. So the environment seems to be the largest in terms of investment volume, and notably is related to fighting climate change and energy efficiency in particular. COVID-19 implies more investment in health services. So in the next picture, so what kind of innovative no, I'm sorry. So what are the aims of innovative finance? So the innovative finance aims at reducing dependence on grants to finance investment needs. In order that innovative finance is possible, you have to, the project should generate revenues, but you can design projects in order that they generate revenues. How to develop innovative financial solutions? First thing, I think we need to increase capacity at municipal or pluri-municipal level. So what I will call a smart finance capacity at municipal level. Develop new business models which are less dependent on grants. Usually you need larger scale to develop innovative financial solutions, and they often imply risk reductions. So you have to design them in order to reduce the risk, because usually you use public funds because there are market distortions or market problems that you need to face, and usually are related to risk. And finally, standardize a small investment, again, to reduce financial cost. So in the next transparency, I present the most common innovative financial instruments, investment funds, where you have all sorts of different funds that has been tried. I mean, funds for energy efficiency, funds to support innovative SMEs, etc. Dedicated credit lines basic on public banks, that is also very much used, for instance, again, to finance energy efficiency. Creation of public companies with the purpose of supporting smart city projects. Risk-sharing facilities, again, to face this problem of risk that in some instance prevents the development of some of these the smart city investments. And very innovative, but now under development, is Untitled, who has already been tried in several countries, for instance, in the UK, but it didn't work well, but in the Netherlands as well. And untaxed finance, which is currently under development. And these two systems allows to reduce the risk with very little cost. All of them can be combined with grants, fiscal incentives, or and technical assistance. Remember that these innovative financial instruments I mentioned here are using public funds, because that was the topic I am developing here. So in the next transparency, I present an example of an innovative fund, which is a fund that was created to support energy efficiency in private residential buildings in Lithuania. In fact, there have been 3 funds. I mean, this scheme is the Jessica 1 fund, but then there was a Jessica 2 and a Jessica 3. So the principle is the following. This looks very complicated, but actually is the structural or cohesion funds, which were previously used to provide grants to rehabilitate buildings, are now transferred into a fund that gives loans to private residential buildings to renovate the building and improve their energy efficiency. The benefit of this approach is that these buildings, well, the owners of these buildings, they have a lot of difficulties to have access to finance, and so grants or if the grants covers only part of the cost, they had difficulties to finance the rest of the cost of these investments. Banks were reluctant to finance this type of projects, but as the project developed and it was very successful. I mean, this fund is 150 million, but then it was followed by another 175 million, and the third, I think, is 100 million. The evolution is that as banks understood that actually the risks were less than they expected, so the leverage in terms of private funds mobilized has increased. So in the last fund, the leverage is 5 times. So for every euro in public funds, 5 euros are invested by private banks or commercial banks to finance this type of investments. I don't go into details, but you have this agency which plays an important role, the Housing and Urban Development Agency, has a different name today. And this agency gives technical advice to the owners to develop the energy efficiency renovation projects. And in addition, there is grants available. These grants varies depending on the level of energy efficiency achieved and the level of income of the households involved. So that for very poor households, the grants can go up to 100%. In the next slide, let me move. Yeah. I know, sorry, I went back to the now. Just some preliminary conclusions that we can discuss later. So first, we have large smart city investment needs. Supporting these investments just with public funds will become impossible because the volumes are enormous. So you need to move more and more into innovative financial solutions that reduce the needs of public funding to finance these investments. The innovative financial solutions requires a changing in the approach from developing projects to develop business models to attract capital and incentivize actors, households, businesses, etc. Finally, something that we will develop later, COVID-19 has weakened the financial capacity of public entities to support smart city projects. So I think makes even more necessary to move into innovative financial solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Juan. Excellent presentation. Now I would invite Carlos Sanchez to present, to make his presentation. Carlos, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much. I still cannot see the slides, but if somebody confirms that the rest of the people are seeing them, I can kick off.
Yes, we are seeing the slides.
Okay, so just give me a second, please. Okay, so we're here today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Whiteham, about the Smart City Infrastructure Fund, and how investing in digital infrastructure can increase the resiliency of cities and communities in this COVID era. Whiteham is a fund manager. Very briefly, we've been operating for 22 years now, in which we have already executed 100 investments for up to 6.6 billion euros, more or less. The team is made up of 16 people from different backgrounds and cultures, which is very interesting. And we are managing funds mainly of Australian, but also European pension funds. I'm going to talk a little bit about ESG because it's very important for us, and now it's very trendy. But we have been working on ESG for the last 22 years because for a long-term investment, it's very important for us to have investments with good scoring in environmental, social, and governance. So every time we do an investment, we take a very careful look at environmental impact, social impact, and governance, and also the standards that we have, that the assets that we're acquiring have. We're signatories of the United Nations Principles for Responsible Investments, and we hold the highest international standards. Moving to the infrastructure fund, we are investing in everything that has to do with city platforms.
Sorry to interrupt you, Carlos, because I'm not sure whether we are on the correct slide. I know that they are changing the slides for you. Which slide do you want us to?
Okay, so we can please move on to slide number 6. Yes. Let me know when.
One moment.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers of the slides. Can you say the title?
It's about smart cities. You should see 3 clouds and a couple of circles at the bottom. Sorry for this technical difficulties.
We are there.
Yes. Okay. So here you see the
next slide, and we will change it.
Great. So on Smart City Infrastructure Fund is investing in smart city platforms. We are working with cities and with developers to invest in digital infrastructure. The idea is to create city platforms that can integrate the different verticals of the services that the city is managing, and the idea is that the city manager has in front of him or her a screen in which they can receive all of the information from traffic, from mobility, from air quality, water systems, but also things related to street lighting, waste management, and not only receiving information but also acting on the infrastructure, so that they can deliver services in a more efficient way. If we can please move to the following slide. In here, the main message is that the fund investment thesis is aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We are working to promote continued urbanization in a sustainable way, a better use of resources, and reducing the climate impact, and also working on building sustainable communities that have access to more services, all done through technological advancements. The fund was launched in November 2018. The main investor, the only investor behind it, is APG, which is a Dutch pension fund, which happens to be the largest European pension fund, and which means that it has like very high ESG investment standards. And we are investing in all across the world, but only on OECD countries. So we can move to the following slide, please. On this one, you see our investment criteria. So we said before that we're investing in the digital infrastructure. We are aiming to own the backbone, the digital backbone of cities. That will allow other services related to energy, transport, or water to move its data and move their services through it. We are managing, we're investing on behalf of pension funds, which means that we have long-term investment horizon, which makes a good fit for cities, and we're investing through equity. One of the requirements that all of our investment have is that we need to share some of the savings that we do, that we create with the city, which also helps to unlock investment, but also we think it's a fair way to do it. As we said before, we're investing on a global scale. having the minimum investment on 10 million euros approximately. If you can please move to the following slide. Here I'm going to give you a couple of examples of investments that we're doing that we think that are especially significant in the COVID era that we are in. So we can please move to the following slide, where we should read Sci-Fi Networks joint venture. On the COVID area, we have seen that during the outbreak, we have understood how important telecommunications are. Not only to keep people in contact, but also to carry out emergency plans that governments and authorities were putting in place. Also allowing people to working from home, which allows economy to keep its pace, and also deliver other services from groceries or medical assistance. During these days and months, we have seen how traffic has increased. In Italy, main network operators were talking about increase of 40, 50, and 60% of traffic, which means how important it is. And we've also seen how the European telecommunications regulator asked streaming platforms like Netflix to lower the quality of the services so that the networks wouldn't overload. So we are continue to investing in private networks. We are partnering with Sci-Fi Networks, which is a developer that has a large pipeline of cities in the US, and there we're building private optic fiber networks across all the city. And the idea is to give internet and TV services, but also to link every important spot in the city, so that tomorrow we can start adding other more smart services like smart meters or air quality or traffic or CCTV. So we will continue investing in optic fiber networks, and I guess that we will see how this is speed up. If we can move to the following slide, then we can discuss a little bit more broader on the smart city platforms that we are developing. We believe that this is even more relevant now because with economic crisis that we're going to be facing, that we are already facing, we need to make sure that we're running all of the services in a more efficient way, not just from an operations point of view, in which the digital side can help, but also from a financial point of view, in which institutional investments can make the use of public funds more efficient and use public funds in a way where they are more needed, and let private funding fund those investments that can stand by themselves because they have natural cash flows behind. So that was my presentation. I'll remain part of the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carlos. It was not an easy presentation with these technical issues. Yeah. Sorry all for these technical issues, but just to let you know that all presentations will be available. You will get an email with the recording of the session and the presentations, so don't worry. Thank you, Carlos, again. Fernando, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know if I have the control. Yes, it seems that I do. Okay, smart cities add high-level infrastructure and digital intelligence to the urban world, and use them in order to achieve a higher quality of life. Our view is that before doing this, the buildings which are low energy performing assets should probably become more efficient. And this is why we think that the first priority and absolute priority in any smart city project is to tackle the energy renovation of the built stock. It was in year 2013 that the International Energy Agency called the energy efficiency as the first fuel, showing that the energy savings from efficiency measures could even exceed the output of every other fossil fuel in the last 30-35 years, from 75 to 2010. So there's a huge opportunity of extracting a kind of energy from this very deteriorated building stock, which makes this a first priority. The European Union in year 2015 defined a motto, which was this energy efficiency first, and energy efficiency is one of the 5 pillars of the EU's energy union. No, so for us, buildings is an absolute priority in any smart city project. Buildings, as probably many of the audience know, are a large energy consumers. They consume around 40% of the final energy consumption. This regards the uses that take place within the buildings, the lighting, the comfort, the domestic appliances that are placed in the buildings. And they are very polluting. The buildings are responsible for 36% of CO2 emissions at European level, and very inefficient. 75% of the whole building stock in the European level have an energy certificate of around E, F, or G. And also, it happens that this building stock is going to remain with us for ages. It is supposed that 80% of the buildings will still be in use by 2050. This is another reason why these smart city projects will have to tackle this necessity first. What are we doing up to now? Well, the European Union has a target of renovating 3% of the building stock per year, but nowadays the situation is that around 1% in general. So for the whole European Union is being renovated. So what is the opportunity here? The opportunity here with these smart city projects is that cities somehow have the power to change the trend, have the power to change the world. The cities, as Georg was saying, represent just a small part of the total world landmass, but their footprint is really enormous. 70% of the global CO2 emissions are coming from cities. So here we think that the city mayors have a unique opportunity to enact change and take into consideration also the buildings as a first priority when defining smart city projects. Also because the cities are much more agile than the nations sometimes in order to face urgencies. So if we go to the next slide, we see what we are doing up to date, and this is no match. There is very low progress, and this is probably due to some perceived barriers in this sector, in this field. First of it, there's no public consciousness, there's no public awareness. It happens that renewables takes hold. Energy transition investing has been mainly devoted to renewables, and somehow governments have been tracking the evolution of these renewable projects and have not given enough attention to the energy efficiency investments. Also because energy efficiency is not an attractive asset in terms of investment. It was Dr. Fatih Birol, the president of the International Energy Agency, that said that energy efficiency is possibly the least sexy energy resource, but the most effective and least costly for climate change. And this is true. Capital looks for attractive investments, and so far the energy efficiency doesn't have that attractiveness. Also because there has been a sense of a lack of viability. These type of projects require long back periods and high cost of capital, high expenses for starting the projects, acquiring the projects, high transaction costs, due diligence. So somehow a parameter that doesn't allow for a fluid investing situation. Also, the recovery periods of these investments, the investments on the energy renovation projects are normally very lengthy. There's also what is called the split incentive. So the benefits of the energy renovation projects go to the tenants, go to the users of the building spaces, but the investments have to be made from the landlords, and this is something that is also a difficulty, a barrier. And also because there is a lack of secondary markets, a lack of capital market liquidity and maturity. There's also a lack of trust. The benefits of these projects, of these investments, come in the form of negative cash flows, on the form of energy savings instead of revenues, and this makes these type of projects very hard to measure. The agents present in this sector sometimes do not perform with the required quality. No? And there's also very low data on the topic. So statistical models that could be used in order to analyze investments cannot really take place for this investing. No? And as I also said before, there's a lack of capabilities, high dispersity, diversity of projects. These building efficiency upgrades are normally very small and geographically dispersed. So this fragmentation make the investing in this type of assets also very difficult, and also because the agents are normally too local and sometimes missing the required capacities and the required competencies. So, excuse me. As a result, what happens? Financing energy demand projects is really much more challenging for private capital than financing energy supply projects. We go to the following slide. This one here. What we see here is that there are many different measures that can be included in an energy renovation project. Our view as a company, as Greenwood Partners, is that behind that built stock, there is something that we call green equity. Okay, so there's a value that is somehow hidden that can be unlocked from the built stock. This green equity needs to be harvested, and this green equity is basically the potential savings on energy bills, and also the value increase that comes out of a building renovation. But the challenge is that in order to harvest that green equity, deep energy retrofits must be enacted, and these type of projects, the deep energy retrofits, normally require long-term capital. We can see here in this graph what type of payback and what type of effort do the different measures require. There are somehow 5 types of efficiency measures in these energy renovation projects. The first one are really quick wins, and this regards to behavioral measures, like changing in usage patterns, lowering the blinds of the windows, closing and opening the windows as needed, for example. Those are very easy, no investment, and very quick payback, of course. Then there is the opportunity to increase the energy efficiency of the equipment and the installations that consume energy within the buildings. So, for example, the lighting systems, changing the bulbs, changing the lighting systems, very quick payback measures. But also those regarding the heating and cooling, which normally take a bit more time. So medium-term payback and higher investment. And then there are some type of measures that regard the insulation, regard the energy demand of the buildings, what are normally called the passive measures. And it happens that this kind of investments, insulation, changing the thermal envelope of the buildings, require much more time in order to be paid back. And also the investment is normally larger. So these are the type of investments that are not normally done. Also, in a deep retrofit, energy generation, so solar roof or geothermal energy investments, if possible, have to be taken into consideration. And in a close future, probably also energy storage investments. So the most significant energy use expenses, heating and cooling, lighting, can reduce the energy consumption, the energy use of the buildings by 30 to 50%. Okay, for higher rates, refurbishments must include those external investments, and this could take the energy reduction levels up to 70%. So these measures require larger time periods. Today, the vast majority of renovation projects do not address this deep renovation, and this is a pity because those buildings that are partially retrofitted are buildings that will never undertake a complete renovation and will never be completely decarbonized. So we go to the following slide. We see here what we think should be done. We think that the long term is not a problem under an investing perspective. There is private capital out there eager to enter into this market. Of course, this this capital asks for an appropriate risk return balance. So as Juan and I just said, we should evolve from funding projects to creating and developing new business models. And this is our view. We think in order to tackle the energy challenge in the built environment, we need to create a new investment asset class. The long-term investors today find that very poor yields for their investing. Returns on long-term fixed income investments are at all-time lows. 30-year German bond at a historical minimum, close to 0% yields. So long-term investing from pension funds, from insurance companies is being directed towards what is called alternative investments. And nowadays, around 30%.
Sorry for interrupt. 2 minutes, please, to end the presentation.
Okay, sorry. So there's a big opportunity in attracting long-term investing and bringing it to this field. So what is needed in order to attract long-term capital? Well, basically reliability. And reliability regards in this type of projects to different layers. The first one is the technical reliability, and the second one regards the financial liability. Our view as a company is that this new business model will have to provide a technical de-risking of the assets. So the whole process of renovation projects will have to elevate the quality standards in order to elevate the credit risk rating of these projects, and that regards certifying the projects in order to make them eligible for long-term investing. The second part is the financial reliability, and this regards analyzing the projects and the whole operations end to end. So taking into consideration credit holder risk assessment, building risk assessment, energy price for those type of projects that will be financed, taking somehow some kind of performance risk. So financial risk, project risk, the operational risk, the reputational risk, and also the regulation risk associated to these projects. And the second element for providing bankability is that the financing should be done in a risk-adjusted mode. So there's a phase in the investment, which is the first phase, in which there is execution and calibration savings, calibration risk. This should be done from a different vehicle than the second type of financing, which comes when the different loans, the different operations can be aggregated and transferred to a securitization vehicle, and thus getting the lowest capital cost of capital available in the market, which is the one that comes from pension funds and insurance companies. So what is? Yes?
We need to go for the question and answers. Could you try to summarize your presentation?
Yeah, very quick. We think there is tailwind nowadays in the energy efficiency arena. Lot of plans, a lot of programs. The renovation wave is going to be critical, and also because this type of investment of activity has finally raised attractiveness due to the the job creating potential of this type of investments. Okay, so I cannot control. Okay, so there's a big opportunity. What we see is that the buildings are a first priority in any smart city projects, but are also part of the future. The buildings with technology, with digitalization, can become main elements of the future energy system, and can become small power plants and provide flexibility to the energy system. So a first priority, but also part of the future. Thank you very much, and sorry for taking more time than required.
No problem, Fernando. Actually, it was a great presentation, so it's always good, but we need to move forward for the question and answer. So I would invite all the speakers, if you could please turn the camera on so that we see you all. Also, I would invite the attendees, please submit your questions at the question chat that you have. Also, if you want, you can raise your hand, and I will try to see it if we have any raised hand. No, we do not have. So if you have any questions, just raise your hand, and we will try to allow you to unmute yourself so that you can post live your question. But actually, after these great presentations, I do have some questions that I would like to make for the panelists. I would start with a question for all of the members. Is a simple question: why should municipalities, and in this case, especially mid-size and small-size municipalities, work with investors to develop city facility or city infrastructures, especially in this COVID area and post-COVID area? What is the added value of working with an investor? We can start by the investors. I don't know who wants to take this one.
I can take this one if I may. For us, the main reason for municipalities, especially small and medium-sized municipalities, to work with institutional investors as ourselves is that we believe that there are certain smart city digital investments that can be done without public funds. And the reason behind this is because by themselves, they are able to generate enough cash flows to attract private investing. And it's a way of getting, of delivering a service, of getting an upgrade that can have an impact on climate change, at the same time as keep investing public money on things that have a larger social impact and that maybe don't have so tangible cash flows behind. And here, the easiest example would be street lighting, where you generate like 60–70% of energy savings, which means that the city can save money, but at the same time we can put up some smart city applications on top of that.
Yeah. Juan here. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
I think it's a very important question. COVID-19 will increase the level of debt of private and public entities, and has also, more specifically on energy, reduced dramatically the energy prices. I mean, the drop in energy prices is fantastic and will last for many years. So the situation is challenging to develop the objective of digital and green investment that the Union has put forward. So how to do that, in my view, is that as most of the funding in smart city investments comes from the public sector, comes from municipalities' own resources, a transfer from the European Union, transfer from the central government, etc. I think what I mentioned about innovation financial solutions, improving the efficiency of using public funds is key in this environment. And I think that the trend should go in this direction. So that in order to achieve our digital and green investments, we have to change the approach of using public funds towards an approach that attracts more capital, and it's more efficient in the use of incentives. I mean, because you will, in many cases, as Fernando and Carlos mentioned, you still need some grants of fiscal incentives that these investments are carried out. Thank you.
Yes, for me, public sector cannot do it alone. The level of investment is really immense. So it's clear that the public sector cannot do it alone. Also because probably public funds could be devoted to other type of public needs if there's enough attractiveness in this type of projects for private capital to come in. Now, for me, it is essential that these type of things be done in a public-private partnership way. Also because the investments do not regard only the capex that is put on the project at the very beginning, but also the opex and the service providing that is behind these projects in a long-term view. This type of smart city infrastructure projects at the end become more a kind of a providing of a service, the service of infrastructure, the service of data intelligence. So a close collaboration between the public, the municipalities, and the private investors in order to pursue this as a long-term partnership, I think is the right way to tackle it.
Georg, do you want to react on it?
Yes, sure. Last but not least, if you want.
Okay.
A few things. I mean, more from an overarching point of view. First of all, what we try to do, in fact, is combining public funding and business model sort of activities within the Lighthouse projects, where we have put some, if you want, seed funding forward in order to foster demonstration of smart city technologies across sectors. So really speaking about energy, transport, and ICT here, and also to try to foster the replication of those solutions. So really bringing cities who are the classical public authorities being in the driving seat, driving the agenda, also politically, putting them in a situation where they also have to think about what's the business model of what we are actually doing here. Also referring to the OPEX mentioned by Fernando. So what happens afterwards? Once we have put this in place and once we need to operate that in the long term. So I truly think that cities are in the driving seat, and what we all together can do is actually to help them building the necessary capacity to do exactly that. Combine public funds with private financing. So really being a market actor, understanding the structure of investments, and also, especially at COVID times, my understanding is that COVID is, of course, an impactful, nasty issue. And but let's say it is not sort of interrupting or hindering the long-term sustainable development. So what also my fellow speakers are referring to, the long-term climate goals, the long-term needs for investment in climate policy, be it energy efficiency, be it carbon neutral transport, you name it. All that is sort of reflected by cities and driven by cities in a way, if we speak about the urban context. And I think there is a bivalent role for investors. One is, of course, to give that necessary sort of a backing to supplement public funding with intelligent, innovative financing. That's what also mentioned. And at the same time, try helping cities to build the necessary capacity to actually bring their solutions to the market, to make them bankable. And that's also pretty much, let's say, the core topic of this webinar, understand. So how do we all help bringing those projects to the market? How do we make them bankable in the end in order to let these investments happen on the ground? So sorry for taking more room here, but I thought that's very important because that's one of the headlining issues of this webinar. So yeah, I would be curious to know more from the investors also, to be honest.
And if I may, Georg, thank you for raising the lighthouse projects, because I think that it links very good with what Juan Alario mentioned before about using public money to de-risk projects and then bringing in private money once the project has been de-risked. So there are many ways in which a project can be de-risked, but the lighthouse project have in some cases proven business models that can work, that didn't work at the beginning, and that's why they needed some public money, but some of them may be ready for private investors to invest in. And when we're talking about private investors, I think it's very important to say the difference between the prism of investors that there are. So some are long-term high risk, some are medium-term medium risk, and some are low risk long-term. And depending on the project that we are doing, you need 1, 2, or 3 of these investors combined. So I think that the lighthouse projects could bring a very good pipeline of projects if they are dealt properly.
Excellent discussion, because actually I think that you just answered 2 of the questions that we already had in the chat, especially how to make links between smart cities and investors. I think that was a bit addressed, but you can come back to it, and how to bring them together and exchange and speak about investments needed, and how do investors react in general. So this is a question from Tatiana Bet. I don't know if I think that you already reacted, but I will take the opportunity to change a little bit this question, but in the same line, and ask Georg if he could highlight us about the things that he's been doing on the marketplace, and what is the role of the marketplace doing this link between the investors in one side and the cities and project developers on the other side.
Yeah, with pleasure. I will try. Pretty much following what I said, what the marketplace is actually trying and aiming for is filling, let's say, a gap between public authorities and investors. So to really enable a dialogue which in the end leads to more projects, to replication of successful approaches, to scaling up of successful approaches, for example, going from district to city level, or doing the same thing in many municipalities in terms of aggregation and so on, and really enable a dialogue between project promoters, which could be cities, but also businesses, approaching our investors of the investor network and ask or enter into a dialogue what needs to be done in order to make this project truly financeable, bankable. And on the other end, giving investors the opportunity to have this unique opportunity to speak not only to one city, but to many cities at a time. Also giving opportunity to pass a message to a whole segment of the market, if you want. So I think that the marketplace plays a role in bringing the different actors together for a purpose, and that is delivering a funnel, a pipeline of projects to make smart cities mainstream as a business model, as an approach. Since still, I mean, I'm on this dossier for 10 years now almost. So I truly believe that smart cities can be an aggregator of green technology, bring about climate goals, achieving them. I think the key word here also is integration. Integration, holistic approach. So also not only looking at the energy envelope of a city, but also at the same time looking at how ICT can enable that, speaking about platforms, or what a key role plays mobility in this ecosystem, speaking about the charging infrastructure, but also other items, spatial items, such as reuse of parking space for different purposes, and all these kinds of things, which really play together and are integrated in a more complex ecosystem. So I believe that the marketplace can be a play field for exactly that, for this dialogue, for making things happening on the ground, maybe triggered by public funding, as in the case of the Lighthouse projects, but then furthermore driven forward, accelerated with a private financing, ideally. So that's a bit the idea with the marketplace and its matchmaking facility, I think.
Okay, so I take the opportunity to invite the cities and also the investors to go to our website, just Google EIP-SCC, and you will find it, and you will see the space where we have, for instance, the investor network, which Smart City Infrastructure Fund and Vineyard Partners are part of it, and we are glad to have you on board. So this is the kind of work exactly that you mentioned. I don't know if you want to react, Carlos and Fernando, since you are a part of this space, being part of the network, of our investor network. If you want to react and see, especially what is the role that platforms such as this one can help you, especially on the pipeline development. And then after that, I have a more technical question from the audience for you all.
Well, I would say that these type of platforms are very interesting in order to get information about also different best practices that are taking place in other parts of the world. At the end, this challenge is a common challenge. Most of the cities are facing the same necessities. So there's a lot to be learned from other cases. And I find that these platforms are a very good source in order to get deeper in those specific situations that might appeal interesting in order to bring to your own situation. So very interesting, I would say, yeah.
So from our side, we've been collaborating with the marketplace for I think around 2 years now. I think we've been taking part in the different events in Sofia, Barcelona, and Brussels, if I don't remember wrong. For us, it's very interesting because we are able to understand and work with developers to try to shape their business plans so that they can be bankable for us. And on the other side, we also work with the cities, and we are in open dialogue with many of them to help them manage their expectations and help them define the types of projects that first of all bring value for themselves, because that's the main driver, but that can also be funded, if it's not by us, long-term low risk, by other players that may be interested in that space. But it's very useful, and being smart cities a new field, let's say, there's no standard approach. It's not like other sectors that are more mature, that you just have projects A, B, C, or D, and you just go and do A with somebody else. And here, there's a lot of work of development and working with both sides. I think that one player which is very important is the developer. because those are the ones that are really driving the projects, are really in between the funding and the cities. So I think that those are very important players that we should really bring into this space, I guess.
Thank you, Carlos. And picking up your word about bankability, I do have a question here that goes in that direction. So there is a clear gap between city staff, project promoters, and investors. Are there some bankability tests that can help both cities and investors to close this gap? A simple framework or questions that are relatively easy and quick for cities to do the initial shaping of projects that help close this gap. This question is made by Georg Golgot. So I will leave it to all of you. I will start probably with Houben trying to answer, so because he's the one that has been more silent on the last round. So,
hello. So the question is very relevant. I mean, how to make city investments bankable. Obviously, the bankability is very much related to the business model, right? If you have revenues enough to cover the investment, right? So that is the first test you have to do. But we forget, and I often see it in the private sector, they forget that many of these investments are not carried out without public incentives. So you need to add incentives in the package. Otherwise, I mean, I've seen as when I was at the EIB that you design nice facilities, but they don't mobilize any investment, right? Typical example is energy efficiency, because despite they say it's the first fuel, if there are no incentives, people don't do it. Right? Because it's not a first priority, neither for the business, not for the households, etc. So the bankability test needs to be combined with incentives. And third, it's often there are often problems of risk perception. So when you develop these markets, we notice very often that financial institutions were very reluctant. Because they say, well, will this work? They will really pay back my finance or not? And the purpose of the public funding in those cases is to have history of level of defaults in this particular investment. So it can be a project to support innovative firms of energy efficiency, whatever. But often we have discovered, and I gave the example of the Jessicas, that the level of default which a priori the banks were considering in retrofitting these old buildings from the communist area, they thought it was very high, and households will not pay back the loans, etc. But it shows up that in reality, when we have a history, the level of defaults was much lower. So and this explains why we move, as I said before, from 100% grants in the first fund to 5 times. I mean, one grant to mobilize 5 times private investment. And the third point I think is very important is volume. You cannot develop these things for a small municipality. I'm sorry, you have to regroup it and work at pluri-municipality level. Otherwise, the cost of setting up, I mean, the technical assistance, the procurement, all these things are extremely costly because a lot of it is fixed cost. And you can do it for, let's say, for one municipality or for 60 municipalities, right? Okay, if you are dealing with a big city, like London, they can do it by themselves, but they have the size to do it. But for small municipalities, you need also to regroup. I'm sorry, a bit long, but I think it's all these factors that plays in the bankability. So you can have a small project, doesn't look bankable, but integrated in a big facility may become bankable and be even this risk, small, combined with other risk, also becomes bankable as well. Thank you.
On that one, if I may, coming back to first of all to the question, I think that these bankability tests can be very, very useful and very relevant, especially when we're talking about small and medium-sized municipalities. And the reason is because we have seen by talking to many of these small municipalities that there's a problem when the municipality doesn't understand the technological solution and how to finance it. And I guess that these types of guidelines can really help them to make that first step, which is first of all understanding if what they're thinking of can work, and if it can work, the ways in which we can make it happen. And
yes.
and I cannot agree more with you, Juan, on the bundling, on the aggregation of projects, and that's something that we identified, and that's why we set the minimum investment of the Smart City Infrastructure Fund on 10 million. But those 10 millions include the bundling, the aggregation of several municipalities to deploy the assets, and not just from efficiencies come from economies of scale on the technology side, but as you were mentioning before, from the financial side too, because all of the big structures that make fundings possible, they only kick in when we have minimal levels of investments.
Yes, if I may just add a note, I mean, this was what triggered that I developed, or we developed with the Commission, the ELENA program, right? Who has mobilized already 6 billion euros. And the idea was to create projects of certain size. Remember, the ELENAs at the beginning, they were minimum 50 million investment, and to create technical units that in the municipality or pluri-municipality context that can develop these projects at scale. And it has shown that this could be done in many cases. I think you mentioned the street lighting was a very good case. In many ELENAs, we developed that, and with very little actually public funds, because many use the ESCO model or use other models that the investment was finally financed by the private sector. Sorry.
Yes, no, I would say that there's no common result, that these projects involve large investments. This means long-term in order to pay back these investments. So in that sense, and since the volume, as it's been said, and the usage that is behind the service that is provided in these type of projects is essential in order to secure the cash flows. It normally happens that some kind of risk sharing facilities have to be part of the game. So in testing and assessing that bankability, also the municipality has to have clear what type of security can provide to that long-term financing. So that's an element that should always, I would say, in the most of the cases, be there. And then the other one that was already mentioned, which is that close cooperation between the three parties, the municipality, the financier, and the developer. Because at the end, we are not talking about providing financing, but providing a service, a long-term service. And that partnership is really essential and should always be there.
George, if you allow,
yes.
Would like to place. Well, first of all, aggregation. That's a long-term keyword when it comes to smart cities. We all know about it. What I would suggest, or even sort of, trigger that a bit in the direction of our fellow investors on this panel. I mean, like, if you get aware, like Carlos, speaking to many municipalities or project promoters, like, there is also maybe a role for you to trigger that aggregation. So if you happen to speak to 3, 4, I don't know how many project promoters who are essentially proposing the same thing, then you could also sort of use that knowledge in order to trigger that aggregation as well. So what I tried to say at the beginning, it's actually working both ways. So it's not only that cities are kind of alone with their responsibility, but that they should also take into account and ask for help from the investor community. And that is also a bit the spirit with the marketplace. The second point is, and that I also found quite relevant, the take on incentives. So not beyond the pure technical delivery and business model definition of a solution, there are also incentives involved. And that brings back a bit like how we take these smart city developments as an integrated, holistic approach, because we also do a lot on citizen engagement, on the perception, on the actual technical solutions. So make for acceptance in the city society that these things are also developed and deployed, because that also plays a huge role when it comes to local policy decision making on those solutions. So there's always a mayor or a chief city officer who's deciding on whether or not to procure a solution. And one aspect there is, of course, whether that's accepted or perceived in a good way. So there is, beyond the pure technical delivery, a whole lot of other incentives. So I just wanted to say that was a very good point. We should not forget about that when talking about what makes a project actually bankable. Thank you. That's it from my end.
Okay, I do have a final question, a final round for 1 minute, and we can follow the order of the agenda. So I'll start by you, Georg. Just it's a final message for the audience, giving the event. From your point of view, how can cities overcome the impact of COVID-19 and the outbreak to promote smart cities investments? I know that we have been answering this, but it's just a final word of 1 minute, or a final sentence of 1 minute from you all. So, Georg.
Yeah, there's always a risk appearing arrogant or not appreciating the situation we're in with COVID-19. But I think what is important is that when it comes to long-term investment, to green development, if you want, that we receive a lot of feedback, and that can be maybe also confirmed by my fellow speakers, that as concerns long-term investment, long-term infrastructure investment on green stuff, let's say, investors have already confirmed their trust that COVID-19 is not having the impact as maybe people would think. And also with this, I would really invite cities, but also project promoters, businesses, startups, and so on, to get their heads around on the marketplace website, to really dive deep into what's already there in terms of knowledge, best practices, and really join the matchmaking process, not least in order to understand better what makes a project bankable, to have an opportunity to speak directly to investors, to learn, and to have really a dialogue on same level, if you want. So that would be my message. So don't give up. Join us, and maybe we can get you where you wish to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. I think that you are muted.
Muted.
Sorry, I was in mute. Can you hear me now? Okay, I think it is necessary to think in a creative way in this situation. You're right, as I said, there will be massive increases in public debt, in private debt, but COVID can also be seen as an opportunity to launch smart city initiatives such as education and distance. So distant education, I'm sorry. You can also develop further, for instance, legal systems that they don't need to be present to do that. I mean, I recall in the UK, before COVID, it was very rare that distant legal approach. And now I think 80% of the cases are done online. You don't need to be present, go to the court to solve that someone has not paying you the rent. That can be solved. So I think, in a way, I think smart city investments are the center, in my view, of the solution to the COVID problems, in the sense that many things now can be done online. You can as well develop energy efficient solutions, which including renewables, that may need as well networks to manage the energy systems in a better way, to adjust to the renewable production and so on. So and to finalize, I will say smart finance, as I said previously, so a different way of seeing finance, moving from public finance into business opportunities, including not just the public sector, but as well thinking differently the private sector, thinking less in profits and more in purpose. It's very more in purpose, and sustainability is, I think, the way forward to face COVID-19. Thank you.
Okay. Carlos, you wanna 1 minute?
Yeah, so 1 minute, I'll be very fast. I do see, I also agree that despite the suffering that COVID has brought, I think that there's also an opportunity, and it has highlighted the importance of digitalization and telecommunications. I think that there's a lot of potential to do on not only on the legal, that's one was mentioned, but also on sectors like health that have not been so modernized lately. And I think that a way in which the institutions can help us to speed things up is could be around standardization of projects. Maybe it's around identifying 1, 2, 3 projects that the European Commission is happy to back, not financially, but like from a proof of concept point of view, and then try to deploy them, working on business models. And then another way that I guess that smart cities can be speed up would be working on their procurement procedures. That I know that they are different in different countries, but I want to raise the example of Italy, in which if a developer proposes a solution to the city and it's accepted, then that project is taken to a public tender, but the company who proposed the project has certain protections and is better placed in the tender. So that's a way of promoting and speeding things up, which I guess it could be good if we could work at the European level to homogenize these systems.
Okay, Fernando.
Yes, well, I would say that there's a one in a lifetime opportunity after the COVID crisis to direct some of the stimulus spending that is being nowadays organized in order to tackle three challenges at the same time. So the first one is the environmental topic. The second one is the necessity to create jobs, and the third one is to increase the quality of life of the citizens. So the smart city projects are the opportunity to do these three things at the same time. If the refurbishing of the built stock is included, 20 employees, fixed employees, per million of euro invested could be created, and this is a very big opportunity for the post-crisis recovery. So I would say a big opportunity, and now the city majors can have a tool to participate actively in this new recovery, this new economic recovery.
Okay, thank you all. Great sentence to end, and great fact that energy efficiency creates 3 times more jobs than fossil fuels investments. So that's a really nice intake to the end of this event. I would like to thank you all for sharing your knowledge and your experience, and for such a great debate at the end. Thank you all, and I hope to see you soon, especially in physical. So see you in front of us. Okay, thank you all. Bye bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.